Confidence is power. When you speak, the world listens if you speak like a man who leads. Stop mumbling, stop doubting, look people in the eye, speak with conviction, own the room. Confidence isn't a gift, it's a weapon. And if you don't use it, someone stronger will use theirs against you. When I tell you to speak with conviction, I'm not giving you some motivational fluff. I'm giving you the truth I lived. Words are everything. Words are the way you project who you are, what you believe, and whether people will respect you or dismiss you. I've seen men with talent, intelligence, even strength, get completely ignored because the way they spoke betrayed weakness. They'd mumble, they'd hesitate, they'd dilute every sentence with maybe or I think. Nobody follows a man who sounds like he doesn't even believe what's coming out of his own mouth, and that's the first law of leadership. If you don't believe in your words, why should anyone else? I wasn't always this way. I remember when I was younger, sitting in rooms where I knew I was the smallest, the poorest, the most invisible. I didn't have the cause, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the power. What chance did I have to be taken seriously? I'll tell you what chance. The moment I decided to stop sounding uncertain. The moment I told myself that no matter what I said, I'd say it like it was the only truth that mattered. Even if I had nothing, I could still make my words carry weight, and that's when I started noticing the shift. People who never cared what I thought suddenly started paying attention. That wasn't luck, that was conviction. Every man needs to understand this. You can spend years building your body, your business, your bank account, but if you open your mouth and sound unsure, it all collapses. People don't just listen to words, they feel the energy behind them. When you speak with doubt, they sense it instantly. It's like blood in the water, and the world is full of sharks ready to eat you alive. But when you speak with authority, even if you're not yet where you want to be, people start treating you as if you already are. Conviction tricks the world into aligning with your belief. I've been in situations where everything was stacked against me. I've walked into gyms where nobody respected me. I've sat across the table from people who had 10 times the resources I had. And I'll tell you, if I'd spoken weakly in those moments, I would have been dismissed before I even got a chance to prove myself. But I didn't. I spoke like a man who was already on top, like the result was already mine. And because I carried that energy, people didn't challenge it, they accepted it. That's the secret. Confidence is contagious, conviction is magnetic. You don't wait for people to give you authority, you take it the moment you open your mouth. When you speak, cut out the hesitation. Don't say, I think maybe this is a good idea. Say, this is what we're doing, this is the way forward. Do you hear the difference? One is a man begging for approval, the other is a man giving direction. And life will always follow the man who gives direction. It doesn't matter if you're in business, in relationships, in a fight, or in a negotiation. Whoever speaks with the most conviction dictates the frame. And once you control the frame, you control everything. I remember nights when I didn't even have money for food, but I'd walk into a room and speak like a man who already owned his destiny. People didn't know I was broke. They didn't know I was struggling. All they knew was that my words carried certainty, and certainty is rare. Most men hide behind doubt, behind excuses, behind weak language. That's why when someone stands up and speaks like he's unshakable, the whole room tilts in his favor. And don't get me wrong, it's not about yelling, it's not about being the loudest. Loudness is insecurity. Conviction is calm, it's firm, it's undeniable. It's the difference between a boy throwing a tantrum and a man giving an order. Conviction doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists and everyone feels it. So when I tell you to speak with conviction, I'm telling you to stop killing your own power with weak words. Stop hiding behind and maybe and I'm not sure. Start believing in the words you choose and deliver them like you expect the world to move when you speak. Because it will. That's what leadership is. That's how you separate yourself from the average, the overlooked, the forgotten. And the moment you learn this, you'll never go unnoticed again. If your words don't carry weight, neither will you. Eye contact is dominance. You can dress sharp, you can stand tall, you can even have the best words lined up in your head, but if you can't hold someone's eyes when you speak, you've already lost. Men don't realize how much of their power leaks out of their eyes. The second you look down, the second you glance away too quickly, the second you fidget, you're broadcasting weakness, and weakness gets eaten alive. The world doesn't reward uncertainty, it rewards certainty. And one of the rawest, purest ways to project certainty is through your eyes. When I was younger, I had moments where I didn't even believe in myself fully. I'd be in situations where I knew I was the underdog, where I didn't have the money, the reputation, or the influence. And in those moments, my instinct was to look away, to avoid eye contact, because deep down I felt like I didn't deserve to lock eyes with people who had more than me. And every time I did that, I lost. People treated me exactly how I presented myself, small, unsure, secondary, but the day I decided to never break eye contact first, everything shifted, because when you lock eyes with someone and you don't flinch, you're sending a message that goes beyond words. You're saying, I'm here, I'm certain, I'm unshakable. I've been in fights where eye contact decided the outcome before the first punch was even thrown. You think combat is just physical? No. Combat starts before the bell. You stare into the other man's eyes, and if you look away, you've already admitted he has something over you. But when you hold your gaze, when you look right into him with zero hesitation, you're planting a seed of doubt inside his mind. I've seen opponents hesitate, slow down, break rhythm, not because I threw a better punch, but because I showed them with my eyes that I wasn't going anywhere. That's dominance without saying a word. And this doesn't only apply in the ring. It applies everywhere. Business meetings, negotiations, even casual conversations. I've sat across from men who had more money than I could dream of at the time, but I never let them see weakness in my eyes. I'd look straight at them, calm, steady, certain, and it always threw them off, because most men crumble under pressure. Most men can't sit in silence, can't hold eye contact without blinking or shifting, because their mind betrays them. They start doubting themselves. But if you can master your gaze, if you can stay locked without breaking, you'll own that space. I remember a time when I was completely broke, walking into a room full of people who knew it. They knew I was at the bottom, but I walked in with my head high and my eyes fixed, and I refused to let anyone make me feel small. And even though I had nothing tangible to offer in that moment, the way I carried myself made them respect me. They didn't pity me, they didn't laugh at me, because my eyes told them I wasn't beaten. And that's what kept me in the game long enough to climb out of those situations. Eye contact forces you to confront yourself too. If you can't look someone else in the eye, it usually means you're not confident in what you're saying or who you are. That's why I tell men to practice it. When you talk to someone, lock in. Don't dart your eyes around like you're scared of being found out. Don't stare at the ground like you don't belong. Look them dead in the eye, speak your truth, and let them feel it. It's uncomfortable at first, but that's the point. Growth comes from discomfort. Weak men will always justify avoiding eye contact. They'll say it's not necessary, or that it makes people uncomfortable. But leadership isn't about making people comfortable. It's about making them respect you, making them recognize your presence, making them believe you're someone worth listening to. And the eyes do that before the mouth even opens. So when I say eye contact is dominance, I mean it literally. If you can't control your eyes, you can't control your presence. And if you can't control your presence, nobody is going to follow you, nobody is going to respect you, and nobody is going to treat you like a man who leads. Never be the man who looks away first. Control your tone. Most men think power comes from being the loudest in the room, from raising their voice, from forcing everyone to hear them. That's insecurity disguised as confidence. True power isn't in how loud you can shout. It's in how calm, steady, and unshakable your tone is when the world is trying to break you. Because when you speak with calm authority, people know you're not rattled, you're not desperate, you're not performing. You're certain, and certainty beats volume every time. I learned this the hard way. When I was younger, especially when I was broke and felt invisible, I thought I had to talk louder to prove myself. I thought if I just spoke over people, they'd take me seriously. But all it did was make me look like a boy throwing a tantrum. Nobody respects the man who's constantly trying to prove he exists. They respect the man who knows he exists and doesn't need to scream about it. That realization changed everything for me. There was a time when I was fighting for opportunities, sitting in rooms with people who had power I couldn't even touch at the time. I knew I couldn't beat them with money, I couldn't beat them with status, but I could beat them with presence. And presence comes from tone. I'd sit there, let everyone else talk fast, talk loud, argue, and when it was my turn, I'd speak slowly, controlled, calm, and the room would shift. Because calmness under pressure signals strength. When everyone else is loud, the calm voice cuts through and commands the most attention. Even in fights, this applied. Before stepping into the ring, I'd watch opponents screaming, hyping themselves up, trying to convince the world they were dangerous. I wouldn't match that energy. I'd stay quiet, composed. My tone with them was controlled, direct, never frantic. And you could see it in their eyes. They started questioning themselves. They started thinking, why isn't he nervous? Why isn't he trying to prove anything? That calmness planted doubt before the fight even began. Life is the same outside the ring. I've had people try to intimidate me in business, in conversations, even in personal situations. They raise their voice, they get aggressive, they try to dominate with volume. And instead of matching that energy, I lower mine. Because when you lower your tone and stay controlled, it forces them to come down to your level. They're forced to listen. They're forced to engage with your calm authority instead of drowning you in noise. That's dominance without aggression. That's leadership. I remember once being in a negotiation where the other guy was slamming his fist on the table, raising his voice, swearing, trying to scare me into folding. Years before, I might have shouted back. But this time I stayed calm, I kept my tone level, and I made him feel foolish. The more he shouted, the weaker he looked. The calmer I stayed, the stronger I looked. In the end, he gave in, not because I shouted louder, but because my tone never broke. That's the difference between boys and men. Boys try to dominate with noise, men dominate with composure. And here's the truth. Controlling your tone isn't just about controlling how others see you, it's about controlling yourself. It's about proving to yourself that no matter how chaotic things get, you stay steady. Because if your voice shakes, if your tone wavers, it means your mind is slipping. But if your tone is calm, it means your mind is locked in. And once you have that, no one can shake you. Weak men believe emotions give them power in their voice. They think anger, shouting, or desperation makes them convincing, but what it really does is expose them. It shows they don't have control, and no one follows a man who isn't in control of himself. Leaders don't beg. Leaders don't whine. Leaders don't scream for attention. Leaders speak with certainty, calmly, like the outcome is already theirs. So stop wasting energy trying to be the loudest in the room. Start mastering the weight of your tone. Make your words deliberate, controlled, and calm. Because when you control your tone, you control the room. And when you control the room, you control the outcome. Calm power always beats loud weakness. Stop apologizing. That's one of the biggest weaknesses I see in men today. Every second word out of their mouth is sorry. Sorry for taking up space. Sorry for speaking. Sorry for existing. They apologize before they even finish a sentence, like they're begging the world not to get angry with them. And that mindset kills respect instantly. A man who constantly apologizes is a man who puts himself beneath everyone else. Leaders don't beg. Leaders don't ask for permission to speak, to act, to exist. Leaders command. When I was younger, I fell into this trap too. I didn't grow up with everything handed to me, and when you don't have power, you feel like you need to soften yourself just to get by. I'd find myself apologizing for being late, apologizing for being broke, apologizing for not measuring up to people who were already ahead of me, and every time I said sorry, I felt smaller, weaker, like I was confirming what the world already thought of me, that I didn't belong at the table. And do you know what happened? People treated me exactly how I treated myself, like I was beneath them. The turning point came when I realized that no one respects the man who's always sorry. People might smile and nod, but deep down they see you as spineless. They see you as someone who bends, someone who pleads, someone who isn't capable of leading. Respect doesn't come from groveling. Respect comes from owning your actions, good or bad, without begging for forgiveness. If you make a mistake, acknowledge it, fix it, and move forward. But don't collapse into apology mode like a weak child. I remember being broke and having nothing to offer but my words and my presence. I used to feel embarrassed about that, like I owed the world an explanation for why I hadn't made it yet, but I learned quickly that apologizing for my position didn't change it. It only made people believe I was destined to stay there. So I stopped apologizing. I walked into every room like I belonged, even if I didn't have the money or the status to back it up, and the shift was incredible. Suddenly, people stopped questioning me. They started respecting me because I respected myself enough to stop acting like I was beneath them. Apologizing weekly is a habit that bleeds into everything: business, relationships, friendships. I've seen men apologize to women constantly, like they're terrified of upsetting them. They think being endlessly sorry will earn them respect, love, or admiration. It doesn't. It makes them disposable. Nobody values the man who always bends. People value the man who stands tall, who says what he means, and doesn't water it down with endless apologies. There's a difference between accountability and begging. Accountability is strength. When I lost fights, when I made mistakes, I owned them. I didn't say, sorry, sorry, sorry. I said, that's on me and I'll fix it. That's how you turn failure into growth. But when you apologize like you're pleading for forgiveness, you give away your power. You tell the world you're beneath it. And once people see you as beneath them, they'll never let you rise above. I remember one deal I was chasing years ago. The other guy tried to put me in a corner, tried to make me feel small, like I wasn't worthy to be at that table, and my old self would have apologized, would have tried to please him. But instead, I refused to shrink. I didn't apologize for who I was or where I was at. I stood firm, I made my points directly, and I showed him through my presence that I wasn't going to beg. And you know what happened? He respected me. He took me seriously, not because I had more resources than him, but because I refused to lower myself with apologies. The truth is, every time you apologize unnecessarily, you chip away at your authority. You can't speak like a leader while constantly begging forgiveness. A leader takes responsibility, but he doesn't grovel. A leader commands respect by showing he respects himself enough to stand by his words and actions without shrinking. So stop apologizing for who you are. Stop apologizing for existing, for speaking, for trying, for being on your path. If you did wrong, fix it and move forward, but never collapse into weakness, because every unnecessary sorry is a message to the world that you're beneath it, and the world will believe you. Leaders don't beg, they command. Confidence grows by action. That's the truth most men don't want to accept. They sit around waiting for confidence to magically appear, like one day they'll wake up and feel ready to take on the world. It doesn't work like that. Confidence isn't a gift that falls into your lap. It's built brick by brick through action. You become confident not because you told yourself you were, but because you went out, took risks, and proved to yourself that you can handle whatever comes. When I was younger, I wasn't confident. I wasn't born standing tall. I wasn't born speaking with power. I wasn't born with people listening to me. I had doubts. I had failures. I had days where I didn't even believe in myself. But the difference between me and the men who stay weak is that I didn't let those doubts freeze me. I still acted, and every time I acted, even if I failed, I grew stronger. Every time I stepped forward when fear told me to step back, I gained another layer of confidence. I remember the first time I got into a real fight. I was nervous, my hands were shaking, my mind was racing. I didn't feel ready, but I stepped into that ring anyway, and even though I made mistakes, even though I got hit, even though it wasn't perfect, I came out the other side alive. Do you know what that gave me? Confidence, not because it was easy, but because I proved to myself that I could do something I was afraid of. That's the formula men keep missing. Confidence is earned through scars, through sweat, through stepping into the fire and realizing you can survive it. Too many men sit around waiting for permission. They wait until they feel ready, until someone tells them it's okay to start, until the stars align. That's weakness. You'll never feel perfectly ready. You'll never have every resource, every piece of knowledge, every ounce of certainty. Confidence comes from moving without all the answers, from acting in spite of fear. The first business I tried, I didn't know everything. The first speech I gave, I wasn't polished. The first fight I entered, I wasn't experienced enough, but I did it anyway, and every action stacked on the last, building confidence piece by piece. I know what it feels like to have nothing. I know what it feels like to be broke, invisible, overlooked, and in those moments it's easy to think, I'll act when I have more, I'll act when I'm ready. But I realized if I kept waiting, I'd stay stuck forever. So I acted. I started training when I didn't have the best equipment. I spoke up when I didn't have status. I walked into rooms like I belonged when I had nothing to prove it. And over time, those actions transformed me. I didn't wait for confidence. I built it. Confidence doesn't come from reading books about it. It doesn't come from sitting around repeating affirmations. It doesn't come from hoping. It comes from doing. From failing, from learning, from getting back up and trying again. That's why most men don't have it. They avoid action because they're afraid of failure, and in avoiding action, they avoid growth. Confidence is forged in the moments you want to run, but instead you step forward. It's built every time you put yourself on the line and survive. I've failed countless times. I've been beaten down, embarrassed, broke, doubted, but every failure gave me more confidence because every failure proved that I could take a hit and keep going. That's what men need to understand. Confidence doesn't mean you think you'll never fail. It means you know you can fail and still move forward. That's unshakable. That's power. So if you're sitting around waiting for the day you feel ready, you're wasting your life. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start acting now with what you have where you are. Take the punch. Take the rejection. Take the setback. Every scar, every bruise, every lesson adds to your confidence. And before long, you'll look back and realize that the man you became was built entirely through action, not waiting. Confidence doesn't come first. You act first, and confidence follows. The man with the strongest voice controls the room. Not the richest, not the tallest, not the one with the flashiest suit or the most followers online. It's the man who speaks like he owns the air everyone else is breathing. Because people follow strength, and strength is carried in your voice. When you open your mouth, people instantly know if you're a leader or just background noise. If your voice shakes, if it fades, if it's hesitant, you'll be ignored. But if your voice carries weight, calm and certain, you'll command attention without even trying. I learned this from experience, not from theory. There was a time when my voice didn't carry weight. I'd walk into rooms where nobody knew my name, nobody cared who I was, and when I spoke, people would talk over me. They didn't respect me because my voice betrayed me. It sounded like I was unsure of myself, like I was asking for permission to be heard, and that crushed me because inside I knew I had something to say, but the way I said it stripped me of all power. But over time, through fights, through failures, through walking into situations where I had no choice but to stand tall, I learned to shape my voice into a weapon. I stopped rushing my words. I stopped letting nerves make me speed up. I started speaking slower, lower, and firmer, and suddenly the reaction was different. People leaned in, people listened, people couldn't look away. That's when I realized, your voice is the signal of your belief in yourself. If you don't believe yourself, no one else will. I remember being broke and sitting at a table full of men who had way more money than me. I didn't have anything material to intimidate them with, but I had my voice. I spoke with certainty, like every word was carved in stone, and even though they knew my situation, they still respected me. They didn't laugh, they didn't dismiss me, because my voice carried strength that money couldn't buy. That's how I survived those years, by controlling the room with nothing but presence and tone. The truth is, most men throw away their power every time they speak. They talk too fast, they fill sentences with hesitation, they laugh nervously, they shrink their voice to avoid standing out. That's weakness, and the world doesn't reward weakness. It rewards the man who can walk into any room and speak in a way that makes everyone stop what they're doing and pay attention. That man sets the direction, that man leads, and everyone else follows. Even if he has less money, less status, less experience. Think about every great leader you've ever seen. It wasn't just what they said, it was how they said it. Calm, measured, strong, not frantic, not desperate, not begging. When a real man speaks, his words don't scatter. They land, they stay with people long after he's done talking. That's the difference between noise and influence. Noise comes and goes, influence echoes. I've been in fights where this mattered too. You think your voice doesn't matter in combat, it does. Before the fight, when you talk to your opponent, when you look at him and speak with calm certainty, it gets inside his head. It tells him you're not just ready, you're inevitable. I've won fights before a single punch was thrown because my voice carried strength that shook the other man's confidence. He realized I wasn't rattled, I wasn't nervous, I wasn't performing. I was certain, and certainty breaks men before fists do. But here's the thing, you don't build a strong voice by waiting around. Just like confidence, it's forged in action. It's built by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, by speaking even when your voice shakes, by forcing yourself to project strength until it becomes natural. I didn't wake up one day with a commanding voice. I built it through losing, through embarrassing moments, through forcing myself to speak up when I wanted to stay quiet. Every time I did, my voice grew stronger, steadier, more unshakable. Men who avoid speaking up never build their voice. They think silence will save them, but all it does is keep them invisible, and nobody follows the invisible man. You have to speak. You have to practice holding the room with your words. You have to learn how to cut out hesitation and deliver sentences like you expect the world to obey, because once you master that, everything changes. People stop overlooking you. They stop dismissing you. They start following you. I've lived both sides of this. I've been the man nobody listened to, and I've been the man who could silence a room with a single sentence. And I'll tell you, the difference is everything. When your voice is weak, your presence is weak. When your voice is strong, your presence becomes undeniable. The man with the strongest voice doesn't just speak, he leads. The world doesn't give power to the man who waits, it bows to the man who speaks, acts, and leads with unshakable certainty.